Well, hello everyone. This is Daniel here at the SOLA Network, and here I am with Steve, Moy, and Helicon Kuan. And I'm going to have you guys introduce yourselves as you go along. What we're talking about today is how to care for someone with cancer. And this is something that has touched many of us. Maybe we have a loved one or a friend who has gone through this, and many times we don't know how to respond well. And so just want to hear from you about your experiences. And so first, both of you have gone through cancer, and both of you are vocational ministers. So I wanted to ask you about this. So the first thing I want to ask you is just share about yourself, and then also your experience with cancer, and how's your health now?
So I'm Steve Moy. I work at the Evangelical Chinese Church of Seattle, and I had cancer back in 2009. So it's about 12 years or so, 13 years or so since my diagnosis and treatment and such. I had non-Hodgkin's lymphoma in my spine. So yeah, I don't want to bore everyone with the medical terms and things like that, but basically it was all up and down my spine, also the bony areas of my skull that had cancer or cancer cells. So going through treatments for about a month of because it was stage 4 cancer. So a whole month of treatments with chemo, and then also some radiation for the spot directly. So cancer, yeah, it was definitely. I don't think anyone's ready for cancer. Everyone tries to avoid the C word, but it happens. So, and it was a first time for me and my family. I don't think anyone, my extended family, anyone had cancer that I knew of at the time. Just talking to my mom afterwards. My grandfather, who I never met on her side, her dad had cancer, but nose cancer, which we didn't know, which I never met him, but he had passed away back in Macau many years ago. So there is a history, which it was not always told to us growing up. So we would never be able to tell our doctors, say, "Oh, did you have a history of cancer?" It was never ever pronounced. So going through the experience, it was crazy because I was in pain for months, from January leading up to April, which was the main thing. I thought I had some kind of pain, some kind of nerve issue, which was kind of true because the cancer was growing in the spine and it was affecting the pain area, the nerves that was affecting the pain areas. It was not until 4 months later, after going through multiple blood tests, seeing many different specialists, just to figure out what the pain was all about, that using a CAT scan was able to find a growth, which was really small and was affecting the nerves. And then, of course, everything was a whirlwind from the 1st of April all the way down to the end of April before I was given chemotherapy, seeing an oncologist and going through all treatments, seeing a second opinion as well. And everyone said, well, your type of cancer is very treatable. This 95% is treatable and you will be in remission. However, there's always that thought going in, like, okay, the 5%, who's the 5%? Am I going to be the 5%? So there's always a sense of, okay, I know my life is in God's hands, and I know that He heals. He is the great healer. So thus, trusting in Him in this process. I think having my wife being there, handling all the medical stuff on the side, and also having someone in our family who's a nurse and an oncology nurse who's able to give knowledge and also wisdom on some of the things that we should be looking out for in the hospital. I still have the box, I guess the box of all the medical records that we still have, and the binder of all the treatments from every day that my wife put together. And she's amazing during the whole time, just doing everything that she could while I was in the hospital. At that time, we also had our oldest daughter was about 4 years old. So just for me, it was just, again, it was just a huge whirlwind and not knowing the outcome, even though doctors, experts would say, well, it's going to be good. It's going to be good. And then having the treatments going in for a week. Okay, you're treated. Okay, go home, recover, come back in 2 weeks and we'll treat you again. So it was just bang, 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 bang. So Treatments were always relating to chemo is always hit or miss. There's some that were fine, just a lot of lethargy, not so low energy levels, spending in the hospital a lot, long times in the hospital, reflecting, and there was other another kind of chemo which we just being tested, just being given it, knowing that this was the bad one. So that would be a lot of just vomiting and other things like that relating to it, and of course the lethargy as well. So yeah, one type of chemo, oh, well, I'll be fine, and then knowing that oh that second one's coming, so I was like, oh, just gotta get prepared for it. Um, Now I'm in full remission. The last 12 years. So I think the doctor said after the first 5 years, you should be in remission. You'll be in remission. It should be good. 10 years. So no indication of any cancer right now, especially not that type.
Thank you, Steve. Thank God that you are in better health now and have been for this many years. Helicon.
Hi, yeah, my name is Helicon Kuan, and I am a pastor at Chinese for Christ Church of San Jose. It's in Silicon Valley. And my experience with cancer was actually I was planning to go on a missions trip to Iraq, and half a year before, I was in Bolivia, and I had problems breathing, and for some reason I was in Bolivia, South America, and it's a high altitude place, and I had a hard time breathing, and then so I decided when I came back I was going to get something done with my nose. And so before my second missions trip to Iraq, I ended up going to the ENT to remove some adenoid tissue that had built up. And it was in that process of finishing my missions planning that I found out the day after I paid for my ticket, which was non-refundable, that I was grounded. I couldn't go because I had stage 2, or I didn't know what kind of cancer, but they had found cancer. And it was Hodgkin's lymphoma. So it's the opposite of Steve's. It was he had non, I had Hodgkin's. Yeah. And mine was actually in my lymph nodes, which is like right here. And I had no idea. I was in great health. I had just lost like a ton of weight working out. I was in probably one of the better stages of my fitness levels. And so I was grounded from going to this missions trip. And basically the process was that whirlwind of finding out what you have, where it is at. And what I ended up having was stage 2A, which is early stage, 2 locations or multiple locations, but it's just 2. It's mostly in my lymph nodes, right and left, right here. And essentially, I did 4 rounds of chemo. I know it's a highly treatable lymphoma, and fortunately, like Steve, ours are both pretty knowledgeable. So certain treatments are widely used and common. So I knew the survival rate was much higher. Obviously, like him, there's a low statistical number that of people that doesn't work out. So that was always a fear, but. I was pretty confident it was going to be okay, but it was still like everybody else. Cancer is no fun, and it was horribly tough at times. I would say like chemo was 4 months, and then we waited to see how far, and it was cleared. And I got to skip the last two rounds, which is every 2 weeks was 1 round for me, and it was like a 4-hour session. So they give you a 1 week of you suffer through the after effects. So 1 week your body recovers, and I would say that chemo. The hardest thing about it was it's like a marathon. Like early on, your body recovers, you're fine within a few days. And then 4 months in, you're just like, it's exhausting. There's starting to be after effects. Everybody's effects or experiences are very different, how they respond to the medication. Some lose certain flavor, some get really nauseous for certain things. I had that. And after that, I did radiation treatment, which was for a month straight. So about 20 days, like 4 weeks, basically, they call it 5 days a week. And it was 1 10-minute burst on the 2 lymph nodes to reassure. And radiation is the older way of doing things. It's kind of like a shotgun blast. Chemo is more precise. It's more like a poison that tries to kill everything that's living. That's why you lose your hair. And so that's kind of the things that went through. And that's the hard part. To me, I always tell people radiation was more vicious because I lost my taste buds and my sense of taste for 2 months or so. And everything tasted horrible. I'll share that later if you want to hear more about that. But yeah, that was tough. And so I went through radiation, and I actually went through the journey kind of without anybody but my church community around me. At that time, I was single, and currently now I'm married, and I have a son that's almost 1 year old next couple of days. And so praise God. I didn't think we could have kids after the chemo and the radiation. So God's provision. But besides that, I think the experience, what's hard is just, I wrote, don't read the stuff online. When you hear about people's cancer, Don't go online and start looking, because they usually give you the worst case. I had people calling me and crying, going, "You're going to die." It was so hard. So my experience was, don't read anything online. Take what your doctor says. They're the professionals, your oncologist, and work with them. And I still have my file full of all my stuff gathered together. So similar to Steve. And oh, by the way, 5 years clear. 5 years clear. Now 6 years. I'm in, they call it deep water, just kind of like Steve. It was pretty awesome to free. But before those checkups, there's always still a little bit of anxiety, a little bit of fear, like what if? And so it's gotten less and less after the subsequent years. But year 5, going past that boundary has made me in remission as well. So I'm so grateful for that. So I don't think as much about cancer anymore as I used to.
Both of you kind of shared a bit about kind of how your prayers were, or what you were thinking, and how you're relating to God. What was your spiritual journey through that time? And then what are some things that, now that you look back, what are some insights that you have in terms of God and how you relate to him?
Well, definitely. With the massive amount of times you have, you're not working. You don't have to see a lot of people. There's a lot of time to do more in-depth Bible devotions and Bible reading. I mean, during the times when you can do it. So there's just a lot of sitting around. Although people say, "Oh, you could watch TV, you could do all this stuff." After a while, those things just didn't matter anymore. I think going in, yeah, there's always that anxiousness and nervousness, saying that, okay, what was the outcome going to be? And I think as it progressed, I just got a sense of peace, knowing that God is going to either heal me, and knowing that things are in His hands. So I felt that I was always at a sense of peace. People would come and visit in the hospital every so often, and people would gather and talk and say, "Hey, how do you feel? What do you think?" And I could see in their eyes that they're anxious, or the way their body language is, they're anxious. But for me, I just felt a sense of peace during the whole process. Once I started the treatments, and I just felt that everything is God's hands. So if I don't survive this, I know that there's a reason why. I don't know why, but I know that I'm in God's hands. So that was what I went through the whole month of chemo and the other treatments.
For me, I think peace was huge too. But for me, the word was gratitude. I think became really thankful, because your faith is you can theorize, you can make things hugely complex. But I think when it comes down to life and death, like Moses says, right, just choose life, right? There's two choices. You're going to die, you're going to live. Do you want to believe, or you don't want to believe? You can live a embittered life, just traveling that course of becoming discouraged and more, or there was an opportunity to lean in and say, "God, you are real, and I can trust in you." And I think the word of God became incredibly real in that time. I think stories like the story of Job became real. I'm sure Steve probably has his own insights. I think Philippians for me was Paul's suffering and yet joy and hopefulness. And if he was to die or if he was to live, it's gain. And I think those are very comforting for me. So the word of God became comforting. I think it was refining. It made me realize how much more God was working. I think I never felt alone. I think that's the piece, right? Is that you never felt alone. You had not only the sense of comfort from God by the Spirit moving, but there was also just people in your life, people that loved you, that wanted to check up on you, that would call you at random times, email you. And that happened many times. There's calls or texts in the middle of the night that would just become, they didn't know, but I was grieving in that moment or struggling. And I needed that voice. And God answered by sending a sister or brother to speak to me. And that helped. And it gave me hope. It gave me hope that there's a life to perhaps live, and how to live it better in the future. So for me, I realized what's more important, like what's important, what are things to be more grateful for? Because now, as you realize, there's some things I'm so mad about or angry about. Why was I so mad? Life is so short, like it's so brief. Why don't I cling to things and be more grateful that I have friends or the loved ones I have, like Steve having his wife at that time. And it's changed the way I look at life today, to this day. I think gratitude. Yeah.
Both of you are in vocational ministry, and this has touched your life. How can people in the church support somebody who's going through cancer? From your experience and also from your professional experience too.
I'll go first this time, Steve.
Yeah, sure.
That's okay. That's my turn. I think one of the great things the church did for me, our church, was their prayer ministry was very active. They held times together just to pray for me, and they didn't stop inviting me to things and even visiting me regularly. So members of my community would visit me, pray with my mom, who was taking care of me for that first month. And that was a huge witness to her and encouragement to her as to the church's love. I think also my church took care of a lot of the costs for me. So for me, that burden was removed, so I didn't have to worry about it as a young pastor, a young single pastor guy. So that was very a grateful thing, was the church's financial support. But mainly it was the prayer and the friendship and the cooking, the food, the meal trains that came. Oh, that was endless cycle of it, but that was so helpful. And so off the top of my head, I'll think of those things for now.
Yeah, similar to Helicon, I think that the community came together, and I think at ECC that's one of the big draws of it, that the community does come together for you. Someone from our smaller group started up a blog for me. This is early on in those years of blogs. So she started a blog, and then somehow it got disseminated to all my friends on the East Coast and such. So I would check on the blog every day, and very similar to Helicon, people would write in it, "Hey, I haven't seen you in 10 years. I'm sorry to hear you have cancer." So just reading and seeing these names, like, "Oh, hey, remember we went to a mission trip together back when we were in college? Do you remember me?" So just people just coming out and supporting, say, "We're praying for you every day." And then later on, after treatment was done and I was healthy, I would hear from just these Sunday school teachers that would say, "Hey, we were praying for you during that time. If you didn't know, right?" And then other little children would come up now that they're teenagers, say, "I remember you. When I was in fourth grade or third grade, Sunday school teachers said, 'Oh, we need to pray for Steve because he has cancer.'" And they remember these things. And now that I hear it, I'm so encouraged that knowing that there's a lot more going on, a lot more in our community that I never knew about. But the blog was great. And I think for me, I wasn't working for the church at that time. So financially, they cover some things. ECC has a fund called this Good Samaritan Fund. So it covers up to a certain about $1,000 initially, and then if there's more needs, then people can apply for it. So that helped a little bit in covering some of the costs of treatments. But of course, it doesn't cover the whole lot, all of it. So, and I think also the meal trains, people would come by and drop off food. I think that's a huge thing as well. That thing started, that the meal train just started up the first day I was diagnosed, and people would just would sign up and just bring all types of food for us just to sustain my family. I mean, I did lose taste early on, so there just a lot that I couldn't taste, but I just still ate it because it's food. It's supposed to sustain me. Of course, losing appetite is a tough thing as well.
Yeah, losing taste, that is not a fun thing. It's like, just imagine eating Chipotle and it tasting like cardboard and like wet paper. That's how I distinctly remember. You can feel the spice, but you can't taste the saltiness and the flavoring. And that was just, I like to eat, so that's just one of the worst experiences.
Is this the kind of thing that I think the average person doesn't know what to say? What would you say to that?
One thing is, don't try to figure out why the person got cancer. Don't be like, "Oh, maybe you needed to go to the gym more. Maybe it was your dietary habits." There was no causal link. They say potentially, yeah, there's a higher likelihood. But I had older sisters in our church, the older Chinese ladies. They want to be helpful, but they always want to tell me I'm not healthy, and so they wanted to make a link between my perhaps college, young adult life habits and the cancer, and that was very unhelpful. That was one of the most discouraging, was just being told like, "Oh yeah, if you did this, you could have done better," and like it was like something that was caused by you. Like there's a sense of your fault to it, and that was painful. That's one thought for now.
I think Yeah, it's very true. Many people just don't know because they're frozen. If they haven't experienced this within a family member or a close friend, oh, what do I say? If I say something, will that trigger them into some kind of some a different stage? But I would encourage those people who don't or freeze up a little bit that it's okay. We're human, and we could take we could take whatever comments you have. I mean, we're in the sickness right now, and it's okay. We know what happened, whether it's going to be good or bad, right? It's okay to say, hey, I'm sorry about having cancer, but also when I did hear that, like, I'm sorry, I said, it's not your fault. You shouldn't be sorry. It this is my body. This is just something's happening to me right now. But I appreciate what you're trying to say, and I appreciate that you did mention it.
Any um any final thoughts as we think through, how do we come alongside and care for someone with this?
I think for me, I think there's a line in Philippians chapter 1. I think right before the for me to live is Christ, to die is gain. There's a section where it says, he was comforted by people praying for him. And I think people telling you they're praying for you, when we say that, it can seem so casual, but if you actually mean it, if you think about it, the idea of being prayed for means that this person, in the busyness of their own lives, the busyness of their own perspective, they pause and they go to our infinite God, our infinite creator, and says, God, I want to pray for this person I care about. And to pause in that moment to say, you're the best thing that can happen for this friend of mine who needs healing. And for me to know that you're being prayed for, like coming to me and say, hey, I've been praying for you. I didn't see that it was something very flippant or dismissive. I thought that was very generous. I was like, man, that's the best thing you could do. You sought God for me, and you would do it in the midst of your own workflow life, your busyness, and you would think about me. I had so many friends just text me, message me, send me gifts, right? But the gifts were small things, but the prayer to me was like, oh, that to this day, I think those are the things that sometimes got me through some hard moments, was just a friend calling me late at night. I'm praying for you right now. And I'm like, I needed that because I felt really depressed. Or right before they told me I'm gonna have to extend my chemo, which was wrong. The person misdiagnosed it, but I was so sad. And my friend messaged me and said, hey, I'm praying for you right now. And I was like, I needed that so much more than you realized. And truly is a comfort, truly is a comfort. So.
Yeah, I agree. That's such a great thing that we talk about all the time. Like, prayer is the biggest thing you can do. And then at times we just don't, we see it as something very simple, but so powerful. And just knowing that there's so many people praying for you, wherever they live. And then also knowing the community, right? People coming by, like, hey, we know you're sick, but hey, we left something outside for you, or just knowing that people continue to care for you, and more so for my family as well. Taking my daughter out, knowing uh, that she might need to be away from me for a bit, so I could recover. They would take her to the zoo or to the science center just to keep her distracted a bit. And then when my family came to visit, other people would walk alongside them and take them out, allow them to just take their minds off my sickness, even though I was in the midst of it. So just hearing those stories and knowing that people are around are so powerful.
Well, gentlemen, thank you for your time. Steve, Moy, and Helicon, Kuan, everyone, thank you for sharing your stories. I'm grateful to hear that you are both in good health now and are serving the Lord in pastoral ministry. Thanks again for your time. Bye, everybody.